The Qatar Grand Prix was supposed to be Oscar Piastri's statement weekend. Instead, it turned into the moment McLaren finally admitted something fans had suspected for months. Piastri was held back by team orders. And the second that revelation went public, Mark Webber's patience snapped. Not only did he challenge the call, he made it clear that what happened in Qatar crossed a line that could reshape Oscar's entire future with McLaren. Because when a team risks a driver's victory to protect internal politics, trust becomes the first casualty. Qatar began like a dream for Oscar. From the very first practice session, he looked untouchable. His car rotated beautifully through the fast corners, his traction on exits was sharp, and his long-run pace impressed every engineer watching the data screens. While other drivers struggled with the heat and the abrasive track surface, Oscar looked like he'd been racing there for years. The entire paddock could see it. He was the fastest McLaren on the circuit. Qualifying sealed the feeling. His lap wasn't just quick, it was commanding. Oscar put together a smooth, confident run that marked him as a genuine threat for the win. Within the garage, even McLaren staff quietly admitted that Oscar was shaping up to be their stronger contender on Sunday. Everything about his performance pointed toward a breakthrough race, but the race didn't unfold that way. From the start, Oscar settled into a solid rhythm. His tyre wear looked good, his pace matched the leaders, and his radio messages were calm and controlled. He had the speed to push forward, he had the strategy window to fight for a podium. He even had the confidence that comes from knowing you are performing at your peak. For the first few laps, it looked like Qatar would be the highlight of his season. Then came the turning point, a team message that changed the entire narrative. Oscar was told to hold position, not to push, not to attack. The instruction came at a moment when he was clearly faster, clearly more comfortable on his tyres, and clearly capable of overtaking the car ahead. McLaren framed the order as a team-first decision, a way to avoid risks and maintain control during a chaotic race. But to anyone watching, it felt like a handbrake applied at the worst possible moment. And to Mark Webber, it felt like a betrayal of his driver's hard-earned momentum. This wasn't just a strategy call. It was the second time in a short period where Piastri's race potential was restricted. Webber had been watching these moments pile up slowly, decisions that always seemed to lean away from Oscar whenever things tightened inside the team. Qatar, however, was the spark that lit the fuse. Oscar stayed professional after the race, but the frustration was there in his voice. He gave short answers, he avoided confrontation. He acted like a driver who felt something important had slipped away, not because of mistakes, but because of instructions he never agreed with. Webber, on the other hand, was done staying quiet. The fallout from Qatar didn't stay inside the garage for long. As soon as the race ended, questions started flying across the paddock. Why was Piastri told to hold position when he was clearly faster? Why did McLaren choose caution on a weekend where Oscar had the pace to fight for the win? And why did that call seem to protect Norris more than the driver who had earned the advantage? McLaren tried to calm the situation by calling the team order a strategic precaution, but that explanation didn't convince anyone. The truth is that the timing of the radio message looked suspicious. Oscar was closing in. He had fresher tyres. His pace was improving with every lap. The overtake was coming. It was just a matter of when, and that's exactly when the team stepped in. To the public, it looked like McLaren didn't want Oscar challenging his teammate. To Mark Webber, it looked even worse. It looked intentional. Webber has been in Formula One long enough to recognise patterns. He lived through years of internal team politics during his time racing against Sebastian Vettel at Red Bull. He knows what it looks like when a team chooses one driver as its main project, even if they never say it outright. In Qatar, the signs returned. The careful language, the risk management excuses, the rushed attempts to downplay the team order. Webber knew exactly what he was seeing. And this time, he wasn't going to allow Oscar to be quietly sidelined. Behind the scenes, Webber moved quickly. He reached out to senior McLaren staff, pushing for explanations, demanding transparency, and making it clear that Piastri deserved the same support and opportunities as any other driver in the garage. But even more importantly, he began preparing for a bigger fight, the public narrative, because in Formula One, perception is power. While McLaren hoped the issue would fade, the story only grew. Analysts on TV questioned the call. Former drivers posted their disbelief online. Fans filled social media with clips showing Oscar being told to slow down. The phrase, "protecting Norris," began trending overnight. For a team that prides itself on fairness, the framing was a PR nightmare. And then Webber dropped the remark that changed everything. In an interview that seemed casual at first, he hinted that Oscar had options and needed to think about what kind of team he wanted to grow with. It wasn't a threat spoken out loud, but it didn't need to be. Everyone in the paddock understood the message. A young driver with Oscar's talent doesn't stay in a place that doesn't fully believe in him. Ferrari, Mercedes, even Red Bull. Every top team watches for cracks like this. Suddenly, the story shifted. The question wasn't why McLaren made the call. The question became whether McLaren could keep Oscar long-term. Inside the team, the energy changed. Meetings ran late. Senior engineers began reviewing their communication choices. Decisions were analysed in a way that suggested someone, somewhere, realised they had crossed a line. Because if a driver starts losing trust, the garage loses its foundation. And once trust breaks, it rarely returns untouched. What made the situation even more explosive was that Qatar wasn't an isolated mistake. It was the moment everything hidden finally became visible. Inside the paddock, people had already been whispering about an internal imbalance at McLaren. Some analysts pointed out how certain strategy calls throughout the season seemed to consistently favour one side of the garage. Others noticed how Oscar's strongest weekends often ended with strangely conservative decisions from the pit wall. Qatar simply turned whispers into evidence, and that's exactly why Webber reacted so strongly. To him, Qatar wasn't a racing error. It was a confirmation of a deeper issue. Oscar was not being positioned as an equal inside the team. For a young driver who had proven race after race that he belonged at the front, that was unacceptable. And for a manager who once suffered from the same problem during his own career, it felt personal. After the team order came to light, Webber began to rethink the entire structure surrounding Oscar. He asked himself a simple question: is McLaren the place where Oscar will become world champion? It wasn't a question of loyalty. It wasn't a question of emotion. It was a question of trajectory. In Formula One, a driver's rise depends as much on the team's belief in them as it does on their natural talent. If that belief weakens, even slightly, the whole future shifts. Meanwhile, Oscar handled the situation with a level of calm that surprised even his critics. He didn't accuse the team. He didn't lash out. He simply stated that he had the pace to do more, a phrase that sounded innocent but carried a powerful truth. For a driver, the knowledge that you had the speed and weren't allowed to use it cuts deeper than any technical failure ever could. The media storm grew louder with every hour. Broadcasters replayed the team radio message on loops. Fans analysed telemetry, and pundits openly questioned whether McLaren was building around one driver at the cost of the other. And the more pressure mounted, the more McLaren found itself trapped. If they defended the team order, they looked biased. If they admitted it was wrong, they validated Webber's anger. Inside the factory, meetings quickly turned into crisis sessions. Department heads were asked to review race strategy procedures. Engineering groups were told to re-examine communication protocols. Managers debated the right way to regain Oscar's trust without making the team look divided. The irony, of course, was that the division was already visible to the public. And then came the moment that made the situation even more fragile. People close to McLaren leaked that Oscar's side of the garage felt pushed aside during a critical phase of the race. It wasn't just the team order itself. It was the tone, the timing, and the lack of conversation before the call was made. That leak changed everything. Suddenly, the story wasn't just a bad decision. It was a sign of an internal relationship breaking under pressure. For Webber, that confirmed what he feared most. Qatar wasn't a stumble. It was a warning sign. As the days passed after Qatar, the conversation around McLaren shifted from frustration to genuine concern. People in the paddock began asking a question that would have been unthinkable just a few months earlier. Could Oscar Piastri actually leave McLaren? It didn't feel like drama anymore. It felt like a realistic scenario. And the more Webber spoke between the lines, the more the possibility grew. Webber understands how Formula One politics work better than most managers in the sport. He knows that teams respond quickly when they sense a driver might be looking elsewhere. That's why his public comments were crafted with surgical precision. He didn't accuse anyone outright. He didn't point fingers. Instead, he spoke in calm, controlled statements that carried a clear message. Treat Oscar as a future champion, or someone else will. And that message travelled fast. Ferrari fans began discussing Oscar online. Mercedes insiders casually mentioned his name in interviews. Even Red Bull supporters joked, half seriously, that Oscar's calm personality and raw speed would fit perfectly in their lineup. The fact that these conversations were happening at all showed just how much the Qatar incident rattled the sport. Meanwhile, inside McLaren, the leadership felt the pressure like never before. Andrea Stella and the senior strategists faced the uncomfortable truth that their decisions had created a gap of trust. And trust in Formula One is everything. A driver must know that when he pushes to the limit, the team is pushing with him, not pulling him back. To rebuild that trust, McLaren held a series of internal meetings focused on one thing: understanding how the Qatar team order had spiraled into a public crisis. According to people familiar with the discussions, several engineers admitted they underestimated how strong Oscar's pace truly was. Others said the team order was meant as a short-term safety call, never intended to affect the final result. But intent didn't matter anymore. The damage was already done. Oscar, for his part, stayed professional but distant. When asked if he still trusted the team's long-term plan, he gave careful answers, polite, respectful, but noticeably colder. He didn't criticize anyone, he didn't blame McLaren directly, but he didn't rush to defend them either. It was the voice of a driver who was thinking carefully about his future, not just his next race. What made the situation even more delicate was that Oscar's quiet behavior contrasted sharply with Webber's calculated pressure. While Oscar remained publicly calm, Webber played the political game on the outside. He protected Oscar's image while applying maximum heat to the team. The combination was powerful and extremely uncomfortable for McLaren. And then came the statement that sent shockwaves through the paddock. A reporter asked Webber whether Oscar was committed to McLaren long-term. Webber smiled politely and said, "Oscar wants to be where he is valued. That's what matters most." It was the kind of answer that sounds harmless on the surface, but inside Formula One, it was a grenade, because it suggested something no manager says unless the situation has reached a breaking point. Oscar has options, and he is willing to consider them. That sentence changed the tone of the entire story. The moment Webber hinted that Oscar might look elsewhere sent every major team into silent alert mode. In Formula One, you don't wait until a contract expires to make your move. You prepare years in advance. And Piastri, with his combination of calm intelligence and raw speed, instantly became the most interesting potential free agent on the grid. Qatar had done more than just cause tension. It had opened a door, and everyone was looking through it. Inside McLaren, the leadership realized they were facing their most important challenge since rebuilding the team's structure. Keeping Oscar was no longer guaranteed. Rebuilding trust wasn't just about apologizing for a bad call. It meant proving through real actions that he wasn't the second priority in moments that mattered, that he wasn't the backup option, that he wasn't the driver expected to compromise for the sake of harmony. Teams often say that both drivers are equal, but in Qatar, the illusion cracked. McLaren needed a plan, not just to fix the relationship, but to show Oscar that he had a future shaped around him. Quietly, discussions began about restructuring communication systems, giving Oscar more influence in strategy talks, and ensuring that future calls would involve both sides of the garage more evenly. These weren't just performance changes, they were trust-building measures. Meanwhile, Webber continued playing the long game. He didn't attack the team openly, and he didn't demand dramatic changes. He simply kept reminding everyone who Oscar was, a future world champion who deserved to be treated like one. Every interview, every comment, every clipped remark with reporters was deliberate. Webber was building a narrative not with anger, but with leverage, and Oscar felt that support. While he stayed quiet in public, those close to him say he appreciated Webber's willingness to fight. Drivers at his level rarely speak out during conflicts like this. They rely on their managers to carry the political weight. Oscar focused on his driving. Webber focused on the battlefield around it. The Qatar GP became a turning point not because of a bad strategy call, but because of what it revealed. It exposed a gap in McLaren's internal alignment. It exposed a driver who wanted more than polite words. And it exposed a manager who was fully prepared to push the team into action, no matter how uncomfortable the pressure became. As the season closed, one truth remained undeniable. The relationship between McLaren and Oscar Piastri had reached a critical moment. It wasn't broken beyond repair, but it wasn't the same as before Qatar. The foundation had shifted. The balance inside the team had tilted. And for the first time, McLaren had to consider what it truly meant to keep a star driver in an era where loyalty lasts only as long as ambition is respected. Fans now wonder whether Qatar was the spark that will redefine Oscar's career path. Was it just a painful lesson, or was it the warning shot that changes everything? Only one thing is certain: if McLaren doesn't move fast and move decisively, they risk losing a driver who could define the next decade of Formula One. And Webber has already made his position clear. Oscar will stay only where he is valued, backed, and treated like the champion he is becoming.